Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is Grant Cameron, and I have a return guest who is Mr. Drew Bankey, who's known as the Blue Thunder Man. And I'm joined with by my co-host, who has been already very helpful to me today, Sinead Wellahan. And she's going to join me in talking to Drew, because the last time we were on, Drew talked about a number of things that I thought I could get some assistance. The reason I've brought in Sinead sort of on the team is I always want to try to move the subject more from a left brain to a right brain understanding of what this is all about, because I have made the move myself that this is not as physical as people think it is. It's a much more spiritual phenomena. And so Sinead is exactly, the type of person that I need. So welcome, Sinead. How are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you. And I'm very happy to be here.
Beautiful. And let's welcome our guest, Drew Bankey, who's, would you use American Native, or what's the term that, because in Canada, I think we refer to people as Aboriginals. What would the term that you'd use, Drew, for American Indian?
Native American.
Native American. Okay.
Yeah, Native American.
Okay. And you've got a lot of experience. You've got, maybe you can even explain to me, you're medicine man, sun dancer, sacred pipe carrier, Ojibwe named Blue Thunder Man, and you have Clear Channel of Osiris, Archangel Michael, the 11th Dimensional Pleiadian Collective, and of the Source. And then another thing I noticed in your bio here is that his experience with near death. And actually, Sinead and I were actually having a conversation a couple of hours ago that we have this sort of, not fascination, but we realize this is an important thing to be talking about. So let's go through those items. Especially, I'm interested in the near-earth experience. And you had actually even mentioned, we were talking about disabilities. So let's start first of all with the ayahuasca. Tell me what you do in terms of ceremony. You mentioned you're going to be doing one next month. Can you describe what you have? And then maybe Sinead, you can jump in with some questions based upon your experience, because I'm sort of not, I've never had this experience. I've studied it, but I'm very interested in it.
Sure. Drew, I'd like it. It would be great if you could start, and then we can be prompted by what you're talking about.
Sure. So ayahuasca, first time I experienced ayahuasca was in 2015 at Orlando. It's an ayahuasca church in Orlando, Florida. And it was just getting off the ground when I was there. It was only over about 6-7 months, but me and my wife are actually returning there next month, February 14th through 16th. We're going to be guest singers and sharing our songs and prayers with guitar and native flute and harmonica and ukulele and et cetera, et cetera. But it's turned into a very big, very nice sized church now. They serve about 80 people in ceremony. They have a nice maloka. They've put in the DEA exemptions with the United States and such. So not getting into too much about Soul Quest, but that's where it all started. So it's a really big honor for us to return there. I'm a veteran, two tours in Iraq, and come back with PTSD. Went to ceremony not knowing anything about the spiritual side of it, and not knowing what I was getting into really. But did my first 2 ceremonies and really opened up to a whole different understanding of existence, and which has only gotten deeper and deeper and farther out over the years. But back 2017 we started dedicated our lives full time to the medicine work. We were operating part-time up until that point, leading ceremonies, starting off with a combo of different medicine from South America. And 2017 was probably about the year we went full time, dedicating our full time, um, all of our energy, both me and my wife, into. Initially, it was healing veterans, and then it moved into just healing everybody, and then it opened up into the evolutionary. Stumbled upon, I guess, or opened up my own pathway of an evolutionary guide to help awaken the human collective. So now I work with, we're ordained, if you would call it. We were found by different medicine people that were advised in dreams or visions to seek us out, and that's how we received altars for ayahuasca, wachuma, and we work with peyote as well, the Native American Church. I'm a lifetime member of the Native American Church, and but I don't.
Can I start with a question? Were
Sure.
you cured of the PTSD? Because that's what you hear is that, like psilocybin and ayahuasca and stuff, that this is. I just heard the psilocybin that it's very, very successful against PTSD, depression stuff. Were you cured from your Iraqi tour stuff, your PTSD?
I wouldn't say cured. I wouldn't. I don't believe there's ever a cure for PTSD. I believe it just. I believe it's always going to be there. It's just my perception of how it affects my life is not from a physical perspective anymore. It's from a consciousness perspective.
Mm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And actually, interestingly, I just watched a documentary a day or two ago about two war veterans who decided to, I think they were in their 30s, and this happened not too long ago, and they decided to do a walk. Forgive me, I can't remember from where, but practically all the way across the country to the California coast as something of a walkabout, like a kind of spirit quest, because they were suffering so severely from PTSD. And one of them found the experience extremely healing. They met with some Aboriginal people, some Indigenous people along the way, and had a meeting with one leader that made quite an impact on both of them. One of them did not experience enough benefit from the walk, and so he started to do something called power breathing that completely transformed him, and he's now become a teacher of that technique to help veterans to heal. So the documentary was very moving. I really cannot imagine what it was like for you to go through that. I can't imagine what it's like for anyone to go through that. And because we're talking right now about spiritual matters, I mean, what a way to become disconnected from oneself and to, fragment the spiritual body by going through something like that. So major kudos to you for putting yourself through this healing and then offering it to other people as well. That takes a huge amount of strength. And I do understand what you mean by not being completely cured. And I'm wondering how did you come to the ayahuasca? Like, how did that arrive in your life? What made you feel like going to this church to experience that?
Well, the actual peyote showed up in my dream. I never done anything like that. I mean, when I was a kid, did the typical experimenting with marijuana, maybe mushrooms here and there, but never did anything in a ceremonial setting. And peyote just come to me in my dream, and for some reason it kept coming to me in my dream, and I started, and this is when I was going through a really hard time with PTSD and a lot of depression and a lot of suicidal thoughts and whatnot. And the peyote come to me in my dream, started looking, I took that as a message. I guess that was like one of the first times I actually acted on dreams or whatever, to guide me. Started looking for a peyote and a ceremony, and it was just pretty much impossible to find. But in looking for the peyote, the word ayahuasca come up. I've never heard it before. I started looking into that, and there's so many stories come up of veterans being helped with ayahuasca.
Yeah.
And so I took that as my next message to continue that search. that led me to looking down in Peru. At the time, me and my wife couldn't afford it. We couldn't afford to travel or whatnot, and kind of gave up on it. And behind the scenes, my wife was searching out for hours because she knew that if she didn't do something, she was going to lose me to myself eventually. So behind the scenes, she was hunting down researching, and finally come across a church in Orlando, and um, we booked it, and 2 weeks later we were in Orlando drinking ayahuasca for the first time. But
Wow. So who was
so,
guiding, sorry, who
go
was
ahead.
guiding you through the ceremony? Was it a shaman who was an American person or a Peruvian or?
Yeah, it was an American. He had actually lived in Germany for a while, and then went to South America and did ceremonies down there, and got a message to start a church, and said that everything would be laid out on him, and he would end up being supported and a legalized ayahuasca church. So, and now, you know, that was in 2015 when he started. Or maybe he started in 2014. We went there in 2015, and he's still going. And um, he's 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 brought shamans up from South America, and hosts different singers and stuff. And it's really interesting starting off there and going in not knowing about the spirit world, and now going back and and singing for place. Um, it's really big honor to and confirmation of our path and where we're headed and everything. So
Hmm. Yeah, it finds its way to us, doesn't it? As long as we're receptive, it makes sure that we know
yeah,
that it's there. I'm
yeah,
also
it's
curious.
about heart space.
I'm sorry.
Heart space is really heart space and intention. You know, if you're in the right heart space and your intentions align with the universe and what the greater good wants, it'll happen. And we're starting to see that more and more in our daily lives now, both me in our relationship and our finances and whatnot. It's really just coming together really quickly. It's amazing. So
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. And actually, Grant, I was just thinking as Drew was speaking about how we've talked about not only the courage that people have to take on to nurture in themselves in order to come through traumatic experiences, but also that traumatic experiences have a way of cracking you open to be able to be receptive to this spiritual side of our world that we don't often pay enough attention to, that we don't know how to listen to, that we don't know how to be receptive to, within the confines of our conditioning in this society and our culture. So it sounds like you kind of had both of those things occur. You really had to hold yourself together on your own in a way to be able to brave through this and try to find a way to heal yourself, but also that you were then able to be receptive to what was coming to you to help you heal yourself from maybe external sources as well, depending on your perspective about it. Some people say that it's their own self, it's their higher self, or it's their future self. Other people believe that it's other beings and, it's ancestors, it's ETs. What is your take on that? What did you feel? Who do you feel are your guides? Who is coming? I mean, you've named Archangel Michael. Is there anyone else that you feel is really right there with you who helped you come to this point? In this
I believe we do have guides, in the sense that anyone that's been in our life or past lives that were in collaboration with our soul essence. I believe each of us has a soul essence that has multiple lifetimes or lives on other dimensional fields at the same time. So there's those soul essences, I believe, cooperate across all the dimensional spaces. So in this dimensional space, I'm being supported by spirit guides from that I may be helping in other dimensions. It's like a give and take relationship. Right now, and this is kind of getting into the channeling a little bit, but I started channeling. I channeled, first was Osiris by accident. I channeled a few more beings, Archangel Michael, 11 Pleiadian Collective. And actually, when I was in channel one time, I asked, I said, this all sounds the same. I said, it sounds like it's coming from the same thing. And it's like, oh, and then whatever this energy was, it said, oh, does it? Why don't you elaborate on that a little more? And I was like, well, the message, the consciousness, it all sounds like the same. And it's like, it is all the same. I said, well, what is it? And I said, is this the creator? They said, and this is my first channeling from source was, I am not the creator, you are the creator. I am the source of all energy. You are the creator through the power of manifestation. Step into your power to facilitate the next phase of evolution.
Wow.
So it was when I let go of my boundaries of the Sundance and ayahuasca and meditation and this and that and energy work. Finally, it was such a big story that I was taking in. I started asking the question, what is this and how does it become simpler? At some point, this has to become simpler. They told me to remove the boundaries of my thought process. My perception was building all this storyline. I removed the boundaries, and that's what led in the Christ consciousness, one consciousness, whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
But and then the vast information downloads came. You know, I started getting messages about. I started seeing. I was there when Jesus was crucified. I know why he was crucified the way he was. I started seeing. My time was not part of my confined of anymore. Even in the physical, I could close my eyes and travel anywhere. I've been interviewing with MUFON, and I've astral traveled several times, and astral traveled in places that I shouldn't know about, and described in great detail about those facilities inside that I shouldn't know about. And the only way that you could get in there is being a government or astral travel inside. So,
wow.
When you release the boundaries, we all have it. I'm not setting, and I make that very clear. Try to make it very clear in all my interviews. I'm not sitting here claiming to be an X-Men or superpowers or anything. I'm actually sitting here to display what I can do, and what I've come across. Share it, and hopefully you have the listener will have the same experiences to unlock those same that same knowledge that's inside them. You know, I think it's very funny. People keep looking at the sky or keep looking at the government for disclosure, when really the disclosure's inside. They have to look inside.
That's exactly what Grant and I were talking about yesterday in a rabbit hole conversation. Grant has a group chat you probably know of, or maybe you don't, called The Rabbit Hole, and people just come together and share experiences, and that came up during that conversation. We've talked about it since. Totally agree on that point. Yeah, it's just we cling to things that really are too grounded in this particular plane of reality, it seems, and it prevents us from being able to go elsewhere, you know, in our thinking, in our perception, in our expansion of our minds. And that's what leads us into the understanding of consciousness and universality and interconnectedness and the fact that it's all one. So I'm completely with you on that. I'm sure Grant could speak to that as well right now. Do you want to pipe in there, Grant?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's maybe you can define for me what's your understanding. Like, there's one, it's all the same thing. It's a matter of interpretation, and because that's what we basically come down to is trying to understand, because I think you're getting to it in terms of everybody can tap into it. You're nobody special. And so maybe you can elaborate a little bit more on your concept of the universe, of God, of multi-dimensions, or how do you sort of take it based upon the downloads you've gotten. And maybe you can get into a little bit about a download. Like, what do you mean by in terms of download? What are you given?
Okay. Well, I do want to back up and say that one thing before we move away from ayahuasca is a doorway. Just as psilocybin's a doorway, just as peyote's a doorway, just as meditation's a doorway or whatnot. Ayahuasca is not the only answer is just one of the answers.
One of the
It's a,
contact modalities. That's what I'd say. It's a contact modality. It opens a door. You mentioned
correct.
before, maybe we can, if before we leave ayahuasca, you'd mentioned before about a blind person that was in the ayahuasca. Can you tell that story?
Oh yeah. So we were in Florida. We were getting ready for ceremony. This was last year. And I was preparing the medicine. I was removing it from the refrigerator. You got to keep it cold. And I was removing it from the refrigerator, and I was getting ready to cook it to get it to the consistency for ceremony. And we were at a friend's house, and they had they had a visitor over, and their child, the 15-year-old boy, his name was Tyler, and he was blind, completely blind, couldn't see at all. And he was in the kitchen, sitting at the counter. He was talking to me as I was doing my thing, and I removed the medicine, the ayahuasca, from the refrigerator. I had it in my hands. As soon as I took it out of the refrigerator, I heard him say, he goes, "Oh, what is that?" And I was like, well, I didn't really process what was going on at that moment. But I turned and took 2 steps. I was like, wait a minute. I was like, I turned around. I said, Tyler, what do you see right now? He said, I see a big ball of light. I said, where do you see it? And I had it in my left hand, and I have my right and left hand out, and he reached out and grabbed it in my left hand. And
Wow.
it was, I was tearing up. It was so amazing. Like, he said, what is that? And I said,
That's amazing.
without even thinking about it, I said, this is the center of the universe, Tyler. I said, this is the center of the universe right here. And I said, this is a portal to go to the other side and see the spirit world. He said, I see the spirit world all the time. I said, really? Yeah, he said he sees spirits and all the time. So
Wow.
one other thing, me and my brother-in-law was here in Crestone, and this is a real quick story, but
Yeah.
we were sitting outside, and we weren't really doing a mushroom ceremony. We're just having some mushrooms, and he's from Ohio. He was out here visiting. He's like, you always talk about all these ships and everything. Show me what's out here. So I started going meditation. I just started going through the structure of the universe, how I saw it. And we had 3 tones that come down around us, and we actually heard footsteps of beings that were walking around us that were invisible.
Wow.
But heard a lot of vibrations. And my brother-in-law, he's like got 10% vision in his left eye, and for 2 hours he had perfect vision in both eyes.
Wow.
And it faded away, but yeah, he covered up his other eye, and I was testing him out. I was like, how many fingers am I holding up and everything? And next day it's gone. But during that time, the vibration had healed him, and for whatever reason it went back the way it was. But
wow. I can tell a story that adds to that. I was with a guy I've known for 25 years. He used to, the UFO Congress, this guy used to help run UFO Congress. Everybody's known this guy's totally blind for 25 years. And his wife leads him around. And he told the story at one experience, or almost like a rabbit hole thing that we had. He told this story, and he said he'd gone for some sort of thing, and they're going to try to do something with his vision in Philadelphia. And they were in a hotel restaurant. And he suddenly said, I could suddenly see. And then his wife says, you cannot. He said, yeah, I can see. She says, what's the waitress wearing? She's wearing a brown apron, and he's describing this. And she said, you can see. And he looked around, and there was a bunch of reptilians in this restaurant. And the one sitting beside him in the next booth said, okay, you've seen, now do something about it, or tell somebody. And I'm listening to this guy. I've known this guy for 25 years, and he's telling me a story, and I'm going, what? And then he said he got back to the hotel, almost like your brother-in-law. He got back to the hotel, and he said it just seemed to fade away. He said he lost his sight again, and then they went to the airport, and he got it back at the airport as the people were coming off the plane before they loaded. The same thing. The sight came, and everybody knew this guy had been blind for 25 years, and then it went back. So it gives you this impression that this is reversible. And it's just, we may not know how to access that energy. It's interesting story, because I've got a story that backs that up, exactly the same story.
Wow, that's really incredible. And it actually reminds me of what we were talking about earlier, as thinking of disability in different ways. And we're used to thinking about disability. And one of those ways is disability as a possible contact modality, you know, like allowing people to have certain sensitivities that, that gives them contact, that gives them communication. And Drew, we haven't actually talked about this yet, but I'm actually a deaf person. I have a 90% hearing loss. I have 2 cochlear implants. And for me, part of my journey has been understanding my hearing loss and how that might have something to do with myself as a spiritual being. And I'm gaining more and more understanding into that. And I do feel that the hearing loss aspect is part of my contact ability. And also what you were saying about ayahuasca being a door, I really, really agree with that. I think people, you know, sometimes get hung up on what the right kind of contact modality is, and there is no right kind. It can be so many different things. And also there's a misperception of ayahuasca as being a drug, where it is not a drug, it's a medicine. So it is a healing, it's a consciousness that you invite into yourself, and it allows you to participate in healing yourself in a very, very powerful way. And so I relate to what you said about that it's an opportunity, you know, it's an opportunity, it's an open door that you can choose to walk through. And a lot of what you experience has to do with your own mindset and your own perception. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
So,
yeah.
Sorry. No, please go on.
I actually lost where I was going. I actually spaced out for a second, forgot where I was going with that. But yeah, it's vibration. Really, our existence is a mixture of vibration and frequency. And you know, the Fibonacci sequence is basically what I'm able to see in ceremony, working with the medicine, setting behind the altar. I'm able, when I think I was telling Grant in our last interview about describing a little bit how I see it. It's just energy. I see the chakra line going up and down, and I see the beings pretty much like that. The beings being other humans, other people that are in ceremony. So the illusion completely fades away, and I get down to a very very elementary or very basic level of what it looks like, or however you want to look at it. It could be basic or intricate, but it's just so. And then with the songs, I know Grant was asking about the songs and how they relate to ceremonies earlier, and I want to touch on that. I guess I'm kind of working my way into that question, or talking about that.
Yeah, that's like the set and setting thing. The importance, like in a in an ayahuasca thing, of set and setting, that you do it in the proper environment and with the proper idea.
So you can pretty much anybody can go on the internet. You don't even have to go on the dark web. You can get ayahuasca. You can order ayahuasca and get it sent to your door and drink it, and it'll have you're having an experience. But when you have an experience that someone, both my altars with Wachuma and ayahuasca, the spirit of ayahuasca has went to a different medicine person and said, hey, we want this person to work with us. So when you have someone that has been ordained by the spirit, in a sense like that, the ceremony is way different. You're dealing with the full healing energy that's been built up over thousands of years from the ceremony. Because really, each ceremony, the power of ayahuasca gets stronger. So the more it goes, and that's with anything. We could set up a ceremony right now, and a year from now, it'll be way powerful now than it is. And that's really kind of what happened with ayahuasca, in a way. It was definitely in divine order, but for me, the ayahuasca is the spirit, is the divine feminine of the universe.
Wow.
So it is the spirit of the earth. It is the spirit that's represented by the earth. It is the spirit that's represented by each and every female. And peyote, San Pedro and the peyote cactus that's behind me, that's the divine masculine of the universe. That's the sky, that's the stars and the sun and everything else.
I have to say
So,
something because I am relating so much to what you're saying right now. For me, doing ayahuasca it was important for me to be on the land where the plant grows. I have a very strong land connection, so for me, it was important to be there to do it in Peru, and that I feel like contributed to my experience. But prior to doing the ayahuasca, I was doing a spiritual tour through the Sacred Valley of the Incas and took Huachuma San Pedro there. And what was interesting about what you're saying is that when I took Huachuma, first of all, it started at 8:30 in the morning. The experience went until very late at night, but everything happened in the sky.
hmm
Everything. So everything that I
yeah,
saw was in the sky. Whereas with ayahuasca, it was in my mind, it was in myself, but also in different planes of reality. But with Huachuma, I could see everything around me, the environment I was in. I was sitting on grass outdoors in the mountains, in the Andes Mountains. And I knew exactly where I was, but I was also seeing an incredible amount of detail through, the messaging was very visual in the sky. So I really relate to what you just said.
yeah, for sure. The Wachuma, you know, I've seen other dimensional fields where I am a Wachuma cactus, so this is why I'm so connected to the Wachuma in this dimensional space.
Hmm.
Um, and as soon as I received the as soon as I received the altar for Miss San Pedro, um, I got just a massive download of the history of Wachuma, the star, how it's connected to the stars, how it's connected to the sun, and I was really the Wachuma what opened up all star knowledge to me. I was able to see the universe and how the creator, the source, is not confined to the earth. It's actually the source and creator of everything that's ever was in
Mm.
this dimension, in this dimensional field and outside, and how we're particles of that source, and how we're what our exact mission is here. You know, just everybody asks what our mission is here. It's really just to have an experience and learn from those experiences.
Yeah.
And our consciousness grows, and in turn, the consciousness of source, the collective consciousness, or the consciousness of source expands in that from that. So that's really simply our mission here. Go through experiences, and um, and I could go on and on about disabilities. Every everything everything and this is a channeling from source that I received one time. It said everything that happens on the physical plane has an energetic signature. So if we have a if and this is, you can read about Dolores Cannon. She can confirm this in her books. She talks about it all the time about how an injury, no matter if it's a stub toe, get a splinter, or if you lose a hand or arm, or if you don't have your sight or your hearing or whatever, it's a message that has been left for your body to figure out. It's a clue. And when you're able to disconnect yourself and view yourself as an observer, I take a line from Ram Dass real quick. The truth really comes when we start looking as a from an observer and not the participant anymore. And then you can start seeing, your emotional attachment to that's clouding your judgment of what's going on is removed, and the same way that ayahuasca does. So ayahuasca does the same thing. You can see traumas that happen in either this lifetime or past lifetimes, whatever, and it'll make sense to you more because you won't have the emotional connection of the physical to that experience. And you can train yourself to do that, and that's part of evolution we're going in right now. So is
Yeah.
more honoring the physical, but not letting it hinder you from expansion.
Yeah. A lot of it I feel is about letting go, isn't it? Letting
Yeah,
go, letting.
my mantra before I start every ceremony, because most of there'll be half the people in ceremony, like with ayahuasca or whatever, it'd be first timers or only have a ceremony or two. The nervousness is always there. I say trust and surrender. Trust yourself, trust in the medicine, surrender to yourself, surrender to the medicine. It's all
Yes.
love.
Yes. letting go and surrendering. And I think it's, you know, that happens as everything does on so many different levels, right? Like letting go of maybe on a lower level, you know, within this plane that we live in this matrix here, letting go of, you know, expectations of other people, expectations of yourself that are maybe too, that are not serving a positive purpose for you, you know, that are really more judgment than anything else.
Mhm.
Letting go of physical things, you know, letting go of attachment to stuff that we own, letting go of events that happen in your life. And then you can bring it so much higher than that into surrendering, really surrendering yourself into the unknown and just trusting that things
Mhm.
are going to be okay, that the universe is going to take care of you. Because as we all learn, you know, the more we get to know the spiritual side of things, when we do that, when we really just let ourselves leap, then they are there for us, aren't they? They really are, really, really there for us. And because it is about love and it is about connection, and all the positivity that's there really is there. It's not just some kind of flowery, you know, daily motivation that you can say to yourself as you're driving to work to keep yourself in a positive frame of mind. Like, it really is the true nature of how things are. And
Oh yeah, absolutely.
and I have a question for you, kind of relating to that. It sounds like the communication that you're experiencing has a lot to do with maintaining your connection to that feeling, right? Like, not just your communication with yourself, your inner dialogue, but also the communication you're having through channeling, through your ayahuasca practice, through healing others. So do you feel that you, what is occurring with that communication? Has it changed, or is the constancy remaining the same of, you know, the frequency of how they appear to you, how often they appear to you, the messages that they're giving you? Do you feel like the message remains the same, or do you feel like this is a process that you're continuing to grow through and learn more and learn more and learn more as you go along?
Well, overall answer, I believe it'll always be an ongoing process. I believe that each of us are, our duty is to form a language that is particular to us, to the universe, or the spirit side, or your guides, or whatever. So that being said, if you experience something about synchronicity or deja vu or something like that, and you start recognizing that the spirit's trying to talk to you, you
Yeah.
can start to build a relationship with that energy, spirit, or whatever, the consciousness, and say, okay, you know, this is how you say yes, and this is how you say no, and the wind blowing is yes, and you know, whatever else is no. And you gotta, so you start using, it's basically you're starting a new language with the spirits that you can communicate with. So you can, that's a good way to start off. And then, so that my communication now is just, I know that when my lips, if I'm sitting there in meditation, or if I'm just sitting outside looking at the mountains, and I'm starting to get some information that is not from me, and it's really detailed, or it's really past of what's on this earth. I question myself. You know, my question's always is it my imagination? Am I making this up? You know, am I making another sci-fi movie in my mind right now? And my lips will start to tingle, and that's my part of my language that I've built with the spirit, that I know when my lips are starting to tingle, that they are giving me something that I need to share. So,
Wow.
and it's always super it's always super powerful, super positive message, you know. It's, and sometimes I get the message that this is for me not to share, this is for me to know, and know that's going to happen. And I they're telling me when it's time for it to share. You know, there's I see a lot of things. I've seen, being that time is not a constraint to me anymore. I see a lot that's scary sometimes, and it'd be scary to most, that wasn't from, that was looking at it from a different mindset. It would be um, probably not helpful to their existence right now. So I understand it's not their time to know that. So some of the things I have to keep to myself right now, but 95% of everything that I've been shown, told, and everything is all they told me to release it. And
Mhm.
the structure of the universe, with the planets being the chakra, the physical representation of source being the sun, the Fibonacci sequence being directly related to the rotation of the Earth. Just all kinds of just there's too much. We're gonna have to do a whole series or something, Grant. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, you mentioned that that everything has the chakra system, correct? All the living
I
beings.
I believe everything manifested has 7 chakras. It's they're energy ports that allow that particular set of chakra or energy ports to manifest a reality that they have, for one, agreed to, and two, they build it how they see. Um,
Wow.
so the energy comes from the sun. Um, it goes through the plants. We eat the plants, and that's, I think we talked about that last time,
Yeah.
Grant. More, and yeah, so the energy goes, and that's a physical representation of source, is the sun. So everything is set up kind of like this reality. When people say they feel like this is like a cartoon, in a way it is. It's you know, the spirit world is 4K. It's 4K 1080p, and we're a cartoon right now, basically. Where it's a very low vibration we're in right now, and that's not, there's no hierarchy in where I'm talking from. It's just is what it is. We're just very low vibration. We're stuck in lessons that are deeply ingrained in duality. There is no other lesson or experience that doesn't have a core of duality that we experience in this physical. Um,
It's interesting too how people, I think, also get distracted sometimes by this pursuit of happiness, so to speak. The pursuit of like escaping this reality, and that only when they reach some other plane, then they can be happier, then they can be released from these cumbersome things that we suffer through in these bodies on this plane. But anyone who's done really hard work on themselves and has been able to um, or has been lucky enough to be able to be receptive to communication and have guides nearby that they can communicate with, who support them, and they feel their love and they feel their generosity. You see that as your mind and your being, your energy, your heart, everything changes. Your whole reality changes. You were talking much earlier in this conversation about manifestation. Yes, like 100%. Everything can change if you change what's in you, and your
for
perception of
sure.
how you, of yourself, of others, of how you walk through life, and just everything in general. When you change your mindset and your heart, everything else just unfolds in a completely different way, and it can literally happen overnight. It's really quite amazing. And
For
I know it can
sure.
sometimes take a giant breakthrough to get there. Sometimes it can feel to people like they're wading through a swamp. I certainly felt that way. Like I had cement bricks on my feet, and it was taking me forever to get to where I wanted to be. But when I got there, and of course I still have lots of work to do, but when I got to a point where everything just opened up and the door got busted down, and I went, oh, then I realized how true that really was about how attitude is everything, as they say in corporate workshops and such. Attitude is everything. It's really true, because you see the direct results of that happen. Like, it actually occurs in this reality on this plane. It doesn't just
Abs-
happen somewhere else in the airy fairy world that we imagine, or only when you're on ayahuasca, or only when you meditate. It can happen
for
in your daily
sure.
life. Yeah.
Two things. Oh, when I was going through this experience, when I first started going through ceremonies, and I started, these shamans started coming to me, medicine people, and said they was having dreams, and that this is who I am in another lifetime, or this or that or whatever, and I'm supposed to do this. And th- I would just see, I would know the real ones, because there would be this smile about them. and like they knew something that no one else did, you know. And I always ask, I'm like, man, I've suffered so much. Like I've survived suicide attempts, I've survived 2 tours in Iraq, a divorce, you know, and you know, it's just all these things that's happened in my life. I survived all of them, you know. And I would, you know, I just kept thinking in the back of my mind, I want to find out what that smile is about. Like, what do they know? And when I finally found it, like when I finally figured out what they were smiling about, it's like there is no death for me anymore. There is, I found eternal life. I found true sovereignty, and my and then I was told my mission is to show humanity about that sovereignty and try to bring humanity into that sovereignty with me. And it's just, wow, that's what all the suffering was for, you know. The first part of my life, I'm about to turn 40 in a couple months, so um, you know, I got a good another 40 years at least to go of doing this. And what a blessing it is for me to walk this for the next 40 years of walking this way. And you know, being supported by the spirits the way I am and the universe the way I am. You know, I've had so many instances. I know one of the Grant wanted to touch on is about instant manifestation.
Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah,
I
tell me
can't
that.
really
And
say.
we got to get to, before we get to the end, you got to tell me about the near death thing as well, near death experience. So let's do
Okay.
manifestations.
And I'm just going to say
Manifesta-
really quickly, sorry, Drew, just before you start talking, just as a little heads up, we've got about 3.5 minutes left.
Okay.
No.
Okay, manifestation. I had a dream a couple of years ago. I was walking down a dirt road carrying an eagle, and real quick dream. About 4 months later, had another dream, and no, this was in ceremony. I had a message from the spirits that this was coming. I was I was I was deeply connected to the eagle spirit, and this was coming. Well, this this all happened. You know, I don't want to incriminate myself or anything or go too much into it, but this all did happen. To Very real, and the exact way I saw it and everything. So this was an answer to a prayer for me, really. And this was a question that I had of, I was starting to hear voices and get messages and all this stuff. And I was like, look, I have to receive something to know that this is coming. I have to have a connection to the spirit world. I have to have something manifest from this vision or whatever. And I actually asked specifically for this thing to appear. And when it did, it appeared exactly the way I saw it. And this is like my safety net of sanity, I guess. You know, I can't never go past that. Another thing manifested in Florida. Just thinking about Jesus, and there was a lot of things happening at that time. Words were popping off of um, boxes, and we were walking through a grocery store, and words were popping off of boxes that were connected to one word that come off a conversation that two people were having when we was walking down the aisle, that would connect with the word off the box, that would connect to a word from the song. And it was basically, it was the universe saying that we are with you, don't worry, you're not crazy. And it was very intense. And I was telling my wife I got to get out of here. And I got to get outside. I got to get away from people, because I was starting to hear people's thoughts. People's bodies were starting to react as I walked by them from my vibration. Like legs were twitching. This one lady started laughing and dropped a bunch of her groceries. It was very, very odd stuff going on. So I told my wife, I was like, "What? You got to get me out of here." And she's like, "I got a few more things to get." And I was like, "Okay, well, take me over to the produce section. At least I can ground over there, I guess, a little bit." And we walked over to the produce section. Nobody was over there. And she walked away and went to go grab coffee or a few more items that we needed to get before we left. No more. And she walked away, and I'm sitting there and just like trying to breathe and trying not to I felt like I was about to turn inside out in a way at that point. And I heard this voice from behind me. It said, I'm so thankful that you're here again. And um, oh, she just, I heard this crying, and I'm like, oh man, I was like, there's a spirit behind me or something. And I turned around, it was a nun. It was a nun that was dressed in in the physical. She was there shopping, but I guess she saw my aura or something, and she was crying, and she grabbed my hands and put her head in my hands and was crying in my hands. But it was very powerful. About that time, my wife come back up, and I was like, you gotta get me out of here. We started walking up to the register, and this voice kept going through my head. It said, you got to find the story about Jesus Christ, but don't read the Bible. It's just, you don't need that. You don't need all that. You just need a story. You just need like a cliff notes about Jesus, like main points. And I was telling my wife about all this stuff. We got up into the checkout line, and as I was telling her this, I heard something to my right, and I looked, and there was a National Geographic that said, this is Jesus Christ Special Edition, 108 pages. And it's just insane. So I read that. Obviously, I bought it, read it, and I got to the end of it. It was 108 pages. Well, it was 109 pages. The last page really wasn't. It was just pretty much a blank page. 108 pages. And as soon as I saw 108, I was like, man, that is something. I know it connects with them. Well, Buddhist tradition is 108 deities in the Buddhist tradition. I started looking into Buddhist tradition, and that's when I found similarities between the story of Jesus Christ, Buddhist tradition, the Sundance and Native American tradition, ayahuasca, and everything. And that's when my head exploded, and it just it had a, and when it reformed, there was just one source energy, and then I really started getting the truth of everything. Beautiful. At that point.
We're gonna have to do another episode. We've got so much to talk about. You wanted to end with a prayer. Can you explain what the prayer is? And let's end with this prayer for humanity, for the world.
Yeah, our collective consciousness that's connected to the earth is going through a transition right now, going through a process of evolution, and with that brings a lot of different energies that are taking form as natural disasters on the earth, wars, and unrest here and there. I just pray the coming months for the human collective, all the listeners, and everybody that was ever in existence or ever will be, that this transition goes smoothly, and we can trust and surrender to ourselves and our future.
Beautiful.
Thank you, Grant.
Well said.
Thank
Beautiful.
you. Thank you, Sinead.
Thank you.
Thank you, all the viewers.
Beautiful. It's an honor to talk to you, and we're going to do it again. So, and I'll let you know when this is going up, because we have the first section and then this section, and I'm sure we're going to do another. So I appreciate your wisdom, and I'm sure Sinead appreciates as well.
Yes, definitely.
It's a very simple message. I think everybody's telling the same message. We just hear it over and over again, and people who are tapped in are telling that story.
It's the same message,
Yeah.
And that I've there's people that get downloads for books. I have a buddy that my book that I was told to write, my buddy 3 years ago got the same exact title and book that he got downloaded, but he didn't act on it. And it's just the universe needs it to happen. But thank you, and yeah, everybody go check out Sacred Journeys Within, our website. A lot of more information. My wife's art's on there. Upcoming events. We are open for conferences this year, podcasts. So, our mission is to get the message out. So anybody that can help us, please do. Thank you.
Beautiful. And next time, maybe bring your wife on. She seems very supportive of what you're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Sounds great.
Thank you.
Okay.
Good night, everybody. And we'll catch you down the road.
All right.
Namaste.
Namaste.
Bye.